Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today at Peekage's Fireside Chat, where we go over trends in brands marketing. Today, I'm so excited for our viewers. We have a real treat for us today. Richard Vera, who comes to us from Kayo Body Care. Richard has the most extraordinary background. He has had over 20 years in the industry working for giants such as Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, but now he's using a lot of those learnings in smaller brands, Scentbird, and most recently, Kayo Body Care. Richard, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, doing well, doing well. I'm so glad you're joining us today. We can kind of talk about your experiences, what you've learned, and how those can be applied to some folks, suffering some of the aspects of the pandemic. But before we get into that, I know I mentioned a little bit about your background, but if you could go into a little bit more about your detail, how your career progressed, things like that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is also a treat for me. So thank you so much. It's always fun to do this type of things. I always enjoy it. I'm going to try to be brief about myself so that we can jump and, talk right into business. I am actually from Ecuador. I migrated I started in Miami in 1999. In 2000, I was very blessed getting my first job in the industry at L'Oreal, actually. I started as area manager for Lancome, actually, in travel retail. I did that for a few years, and then Estee Lauder kind of stole me away from them, and that's where my career kind of like took off. I became a regional director after a couple of years, and then after a few years, I was promoted to vice president of international for Lab Series. So I got a variety of roles, mostly on the commercial area with Estee Lauder, always, building and developing brands in global markets, including travel retail. And, in my last job there, like I said, I was the head of international for Lab Series. So really driving the growth of the brand globally, which was incredibly fun. So after doing that for all of those two amazing companies where I obviously learned a lot. So after about 17, 18 years in both, I decided to pivot into more of the startup world where I feel is much more fun and we're kind of like the industry is kind of like booming and exploding. I joined Scentbird, which is a fantastic, actually a targeted sampling company as well, focusing on fragrances in that sense. And after 2 years, the position sort of evolved, and it wasn't really what I was looking for of doing with my life. And I decided to go back to the traditional, beauty brand area. And I'm very blessed because now I am supporting this brand called Kayo Body Care. I am basically the head of global sales for them. I'm really having a lot of fun. I mean, the brand is a fantastic brand. It was founded by this, great girl. Her name is Christine. So she's sort of a celebrity fitness expert based in LA. She had created this really, really great brand that we feel fits an entirely new white space in the area of clean body and wellness. The brand is compromised with about 24 SKUs. 10 of them are body care, but the rest of them are actually supplements and actually a hemp line as well, like CBD line. So we look at body from the inside out and head to toe. Really, it's a very comprehensive system, really, to treat your body well. So really enjoying developing and growing the brand. 2020 has been a tough year for Caillou and for everybody. And happy to tell you, what my learnings were and where I think this is going.
Thank you, and thank you for that as well too. KO is such an interesting line because it's like you mentioned, it really is total body. It's not just about the skin. It goes further than that. With the CBD aspect, with the supplement aspect, that's one thing I love about it. There's so many brands that try to do those type of things and maybe dip their toe in the water a little bit and have that aspect to them. But I feel like KO really has a completion of the whole package and one-stop shop for that. So that's amazing. You hit it right on the nose. I think that's what our audience would really love to hear about is, 2020, what did you do to cope? There's a stage of development that brands were at, these indie brands at the time, where I feel like some of them may have gone into panic mode, not knowing exactly where to go at these early stages. Yes, if you could share some insights, that would be incredible.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So first of all, I mean, the one thing that I would say, because this is probably my two slash third indie beauty or startup that I've been, I've been working for.
Mhm.
So Kayo is in a very special stage because we brought in this fantastic guy who basically was brought into Kayo to really take the brand to the next level. So right around September, and this was obviously planned, that's when I started. But that was the time when they decided to actually relaunch the brand and change the primary, secondary packaging, really to change the tone and voice of the brand, to refine it and polish it and make it much more prestige and much more refined. So the end result, which is what you guys see today, if you go to kayu.com or if you browse us at Revolve or them somewhere Violet Grey, is just really fantastic, which is what attracted me really to Kayu. So the first thing that I would say when it comes down to niche beauty brands, the fundamental components of what makes a brand successful, they always kind of have to be there for the future, right? So what I'm saying with that is that, for example, in our case, we have the fantastic founder. I mean, Christine is really amazing. She's articulate. She developed the products herself. She is very knowledgeable of ingredients and what makes the products better for your body. So the second component is that authenticity that comes with her, right? So I saw all of these great elements in the brand when I started. So I joined in September, right in the middle of the pandemic. So, like I said, the brand was sort of in transition mode, which was really interesting because they were ready to take off, and then boom, this thing hit, and of course, so what ended up happening is that it cut everybody off guard. But we basically needed to take the traditional measurements in terms of we had to delay some of the launches in a few international markets that were in the pipeline already. So that obviously delayed our entire revenue stream a little bit. And because of that, and like everybody else, we had to be more conscious with our cash management, right? Cash management became a priority. Our structure is very small and nimble, so obviously we were lucky in that sense, and that's, by the way, a big advice that I would give to founders and startups. Don't go crazy hiring people. Me personally, I'm still as a sort of consultant, so which is kind of what you want to do at the beginning, like try to get expertise as inexpensively as possible, and then as you start building the brand, that's when you take it to the next level and become full-time and stuff. So that was a good thing in our case because we are very small. We're like just a handful of people really pushing and driving the brand. So that allowed us to manage cash efficiently. We also decided to focus on our best sellers. So we had a big pipeline of new products that came really all at once. But especially when I came on board, what I said to the team is, we need to focus on what is selling right now, especially our body care line and our top 5 SKUs, which accounted for the majority of sales. I do feel that sometimes, some founders, that's not our case, but I've seen other founders that get way too emotional about the entire brand and the product. And I always advise to just be a little bit more pragmatic. And, you have just this amount of cash, so you have to put it where it really works. It's one of the big learnings that I learned working at Estee Lauder, by the way. You really focus on your winners, right? And then also, we had to lay a little bit implementation of certain promotional plans. So obviously, we had to again look at our cash and save some money, and really focus our resources and our efforts on what was really driving the business aggressively. So really just whatever cent you have, you want to stretch as much as possible in times of crisis, and make sure that you're investing where it really matters in case of products, in terms of marketing plan. And again, if you're lucky like us to have a nimble structure, thankfully you don't have to like fire anybody or anything like that,
Yeah.
which was our case, thankfully. So that's what we had to do, and obviously we're still coping with that. Thankfully things are starting to get a little bit better, so we're looking forward to this going away finally.
Yeah, aren't we all? I think that everybody's kind of got at least a little bit of COVID fatigue in some way, shape or form. But there's something interesting that you said in all that I was going to touch on. But when we have this going on, people are spending more time at home. People are becoming more savvy anyway about brands, about ingredients, about all those type of things. And I love how you said, like, you really liked the ingredients and the simplicity and all the things that went with Kayo and all that, and how you touched on the different efficacies and all that. I'm curious to know how your approach to gaining a new audience has changed. With all these things going on. I'm sure social media has played a role in this. I'm sure, education has played a role in this. I'm sure, in the couple of things you touched on. But if you could go into more detail on that, that would be fantastic.
Totally, totally. Well, and again, when I joined Kayo, that's one of the things that I really like is, first of all, that this is a digitally native beauty brand, which quite
Mm,
honestly, the majority of the latest beauty brands are digitally native in the sense that they start, in Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. Obviously, now there's more traditional
yeah,
social media platforms. But what we have, which is by the way very hard to accomplish, is a community, and we had that community because of our founder. So I think that the fact that we have somebody like Christine, which not only has 250,000 followers on Instagram, plus YouTube, plus Facebook and all of that, but because of the fact that she herself, has been in beauty for many years, she's been 20 years, being a fitness expert. So that authenticity allow us to pivot very quickly and very easily into the realities of what COVID was bringing. So what I'm trying to say is that since she was already talking about wellness and fitness, so just talk a little bit more about wellness and fitness and just change a little bit the dialogue and the way the content is portrayed. But fundamentally, we were basically using, the same avenues, which again, we're very social media based, mostly because we have this amazing founder that helps, bring consumers into our DTC. So that's really the way. So all this to say that our strategy was already sort of there, very digitally oriented already. So the other thing that we did is that we also revamped it and redid our DTC side. So that was done just a few months ago. So what that allowed us to do is to really create a little bit more of an omni-channel experience. Now leveraging the strong social media that we have with Christine and driving now people into our DTC side, which is what we're doing right now. And also, social media is a brand building channel for us, really, as we're able to convey really that total body wellness experience, like I said, especially with Christine, who's our brand founder and really our ambassador. So long story short, we already were doing this, like what we're supposed to do in terms of driving the brand from a social media perspective. We just changed a little bit tone, but not too much because we're already wellness and body brand. So
mhm.
just change it a little bit to make it more sympathetic to what people were going through.
Very cool. Very cool. And I highly encourage all our viewers to check out Christine. She's amazing. She does incredible work. Definitely check her out. But one question I had is you have her, which is amazing. What about these smaller
Yeah.
brands that are looking at possibly influencers, other folks that may be able to promote their brand or, things like that? What would you recommend to them? Any thoughts?
Oh, well, my biggest recommendation, not only based on this data experience, but coming from very big brands in the beauty industry, is really take your time to build your community. I
Mhm.
know it's not something that some people want to hear in the sense that you may, based on your strategy, want to drive sales really, really fast and see triple digit growth and things like that. But the one thing that I would say that the pandemic has shown us is the importance of building that community. I will tell you, in our case, because like I said, we already had a community and we have so really fantastic products that actually work, our conversion rate is in the high 80s. Like it's crazy. People try it, they love it, and they buy back, they buy back, they buy back. So, um, like that level of resourcefulness when it comes down to just getting a consumer and then keeping that consumer, it's extremely valuable. And that is really one of the biggest advices that I have for brands, like building advocacy, that loyalty
Mhm.
via word of mouth, and sometimes takes a little bit of time, but it has been proven critical, I think, to the brands, especially during this pandemic. So um, that would be my advice, and I know it takes a little bit of time, but sampling is obviously a great way to go in that sense. Having a strong influencer strategy, you don't have to invest millions of dollars on influencers, but you definitely want to put your product out there as much as possible, and really make sure that your social media is authentic and resonate with what you stand for as a brand. And I always advise this when I'm asked to give advice to young entrepreneurs who are launching brands, or somebody who is just starting with a brand. Is like, what do you stand for? Like what is your mission? What do you want to accomplish? If you're on this for the money, it's the consumer is going to see right through you and they're not going to connect with your brand. And I have a 21-year-old daughter, by the way, who is one of my best advisors in everything beauty, because she's like a beauty maniac. And it's really interesting because sometimes, like a grown up like me, much older than her, and you hear that, oh yeah, you have to be community and advocacy. And you're like, well, I have a great brand, but really that loyalty is so important. And my daughter, for example, is one of those people that if she doesn't connect with the brand at a more intimate level, she's just not gonna buy it. She's just not gonna engage with the brand at all in any way. So it really matters, and especially for the younger generation, which is obviously the future of anybody of any brand sales. So that would be my biggest piece of advice on learning when it comes down to building a community. And you don't really need. I mean, yes, having a Christine makes it easier. So I'm not gonna lie, it's really nice. Um, but having good products, having a good idea of where you stand for, what is your mission for the brand, where are you taking the brand, what is the vision for the brand, where you want to go, and if all the components of your brand are well put together and they resonate well with the consumer, your message, your content, your products. When all of that makes sense, I always go and always say the four P's of marketing or product, price, promotion, and place. If it all makes sense, the consumer is going to get it. If you have a good product and you have a clear message and that resonates and your point of differentiation is unique enough, you're going to make it. You really are.
Yeah, no, I agree completely, and it's so funny because we've had folks from other industries and other food products and beverage products, but they say similar things, and it's so funny how it can translate to cosmetics and other things like that. One thing you mentioned is product trial, and with a brand like yours, I know when folks feel those ingredients and when they feel them on their skin, when they touch them, when they apply them, it wins them over. It's one of those products where you try it, you feel it, you love it. Of course, this has completely changed in the last year for cosmetic brands, for so many brands in general, in all sorts of categories. Tell me how this has changed for you and what you see for the future.
So obviously sampling completely changed the moment that COVID hit, right? So that is the truth because you couldn't be sampling now at Sephora or Ulta or whatever you were sampling before as a beauty brand. So it's funny because as you know, I come from a beauty box, so to speak, which was Scentbird. So that's actually a nice way. And now I'm giving some promotion to Scentbird and I, somehow to you guys as well. It is a good way to put product in the hands of the consumers. I can tell you from my own experience that it does work, especially if it's a targeted experience like Scentbird or like you guys. It does definitely work. So that's one way to go. I have to say, beauty boxes are really good as well in that way as well. To put product in the hands of the consumer. And like I
Sure.
said earlier, I really think that a good influencer strategy is pretty good in that sense as well, because especially the younger generation, if they don't have the opportunity to try a product, they're gonna go to whoever they trust and who is doing quote unquote the sampling for them. So whoever follows whatever influencer, they're just going to hear what she says and they're just going to buy it without necessarily test sampling it on. So quite honestly, the cost of sending 3 or 4 or 5 products to an influencer is not that much. If you're able to build that capability internally as a driver of growth and a recruitment of consumers, I would definitely recommend that. But it's definitely challenging, and quite honestly, I am looking forward to brick and mortar starting to open and a little bit more sense of normality when it comes down to more traditional, sampling tactics. And we'll see as well what happens. It's going to be really interesting because as Sephora and Ulta, for example, you probably heard the news that they're going to open more doors in the US. I'm really curious as to see how this is going to go from a sampling perspective, right? Because right now they're not allowed to test. You're not allowed to put products when you go to these retail locations. So hopefully by summer things are going to go back to normal. So in the meantime, though, like I said, you gotta get creative. You gotta go to other opportunities or sampling opportunities where you can use what you already have, leverage your influencers if you have, and will not honestly create an influencer strategy because they would be that sampling avenue for your final consumer.
Yeah, no, I miss those days myself. If you've watched our previous podcast, I've been at Nordstrom, Saks, and I used to be in the trenches, handing out samples, doing product trials, and all of that. Unfortunately, as we've mentioned before, those days are no longer with us, at least for the current times.
For now,
Um,
for now.
for now, exactly. So hopefully they will come back. But
Yeah.
they will come. I think there will be some level of normalcy that comes back, but I don't think it can be denied that some level things have been changed forever on some level.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, yeah, of course. When we talk to, for instance, food and beverage brands, we found that over half of people will not take an in-store food or beverage sample even after the pandemic is over. I'm assuming, for cosmetics, for retail, there's other factors that will come into this as well. Even if the pandemic is over, behaviors will still change. So what would you say to brands that are emerging from this pandemic, that are trying to evolve, that are basically picking up the pieces from last year? What advice would you give them as they want to continue to grow?
I think it's important to, like, now that the pandemic is sort of starting to slow down and hopefully will go away within the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months, it's important at least to start reflecting on what we have learned as an industry or individually as beauty brands as it pertains to our particular brands as well. So it's a process that we are in, that I am in personally. There's a few things that I think are definitely going to stay. For example, the clean beauty and sustainability aspects that have been brought up to the front of the beauty industry are definitely here to stay. I was in a podcast yesterday about clean beauty with an amazing clean beauty brand and who has obviously done really well. And the one thing that as a clean beauty brand ourselves at Kayo that I've noticed is that nowadays there are clean beauty brands, like I said, like ours, that are actually quite effective, because the whole thing about clean meaning non-effective is basically done and over with. So what would end up happening is that from an effectiveness perspective, these clean newer beauty brands that are coming out, they are as efficacious as whatever, an Estee Lauder or Lancome or anything else, but they're clean. So that is a huge advantage. And I think that depending on your brand, really, you want to find a way to have a point of view and a position on that as well. Like, can you move a little bit into that direction? If that's not what your brand stands for, maybe, look into launching an alternative, line that is clean or something like that, and same with sustainability. And that one is a little bit more applicable to all brands in general, especially from a secondary packaging perspective, like getting away from plastic and things like that. Like I said, people like my daughter, like she will definitely buy a brand that stands for something and save in the world. Like definitely she will. So, the Gen Zs and the new generation is coming now, and they're starting to purchase, and they're growing as a consumer base for beauty. You definitely have to start paying attention to that. And again, you want to have a point of view. Like, you don't have to be 100% this super sustainable brand if that's not who you are, but you want to start thinking about moving a little bit into that direction and have a point of view in a way that resonates with who you are as a brand and your consumer. Along the same line, and this is not necessarily related to COVID, but it coincidentally happened at this time, the conversation on inclusiveness and diversity definitely has been brought up to the front. And it's something that you want to think about when it comes down, not just from a hiring process, but also when you're talking to the consumer. Like, for example, us at Kayo, we are paying special attention to that, especially because we're a body brand. So when we display, and you can look at us online, we're not just displaying, the white skin girl, we're displaying women, and that's what we stand for women of all colors, all races, all sizes of everything, because, a body is universal, really. So that's something that you want to think about as well, have a point of view in terms of inclusiveness and diversity. And the last thing that I would strongly recommend, a little bit more on the pragmatic financial side of things, it would be just be very cautious, because if you have done really well in the pandemic, because whatever, you were a nail brand or because you were a clean brand, just make sure that you consider the fact that that may not be the case for 2021, because things are going to start opening. So I always put as an example, like a nail brand versus the makeup brand. Makeup has suffered a lot, as you know, minus 34% in 2020 because of the pandemic. And the nail category just skyrocketed because people stayed at home. But as they start opening, it's going to be the other way around, right? Women are going to start going out. They're not going to have the time to do their nails anymore, but they will need their lipsticks and their eyeshadows and, their foundation and everything to go out again to the world. So makeup brands will rebound for sure in 2021. But if you are in a category that did really well because of the pandemic only, just be cautious when you're planning on 2021. That would be a big piece of advice for me because, your brand may not necessarily grow as fast as it did, not because of their brand, but because of this particular situation. Um, I think those are, for now, what I can think of the would be the most important learnings to take out from this pandemic.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's all very valuable. It's so funny how things like that affected the pandemic. It's funny because I saw that suit sales went down dramatically for obvious reasons, and even myself, I was looking at Nordstrom and Saks and saying, "Gosh, these suits are so cheap," but I have nowhere to wear them.
Yeah.
And so the similar things happen in terms of makeup, other things like that, cosmetics. You're not going to parties as more, not meeting friends. And then on the other side of the coin, there's nails, there's masks. Skincare masks were just so popular. At home masks just blew up completely. So I love that you said that. There's so much of that going on, and there will be a flip side to every coin. There will be a flip side to each one of these coins that you mentioned.
But
And
it's,
oh
if
yeah.
I can if I can just build up on that, because you mentioned something about skincare mask, which is really interesting. So there will be some segments of the market that are going to stay. I don't know if mask is going to be one of them.
Mm.
But when it comes down to, and this is where you have to be smart as a brand. Like when it comes down to wellness, there are some trends in wellness that I believe they will stay. I don't know if mask will be one of them or to what extent, but I do think that they will do better than before, is what I'm trying to say. So you have to be careful. You have to really make sure that you understand your consumer and make some analysis on your consumer and their preferences and how they shift their preferences because of the pandemic. I put the example of nails versus makeup because it was rather easy, right? I mean, nails, it was directly tied to the fact that women have the time route to make their, to do their nails by themselves instead of going outside for that, so it's clear that it's going to come down again. It's clear, and makeup same. They cannot wear lipstick because you cannot see it to the mask, but they will. So, but in the case of masks, you have to be a little bit cautious because they may, and it's going to be tricky. And I feel for brands, including mine, right, including us in Kayo Body Care, like, will somebody decide that, well, you know what, I really love the way that my arms and legs look because of Kayo, but now I need to buy makeup again. So where I'm going to invest my money, right? So that is going to be a challenge for sure. It's going to be a challenge for brands like us that live in that space where, from a wellness perspective, there will be consumers that are going to stay, but some of them are probably not, just because they were just taking advantage of their time at home, and they're just gonna start going out again and start spending their money on other things. So we'll see. It's not easy. It's not easy.
It's definitely not. It's definitely not. And that's why I'm so glad that we have you and our other guests and everyone to share whatever insights they can, because, the more knowledge that we can share with folks and the more industry experience we have to share, that's what's going to be very valuable, I find. So one final thought, I know that you've shared so much great information, but anything you can say from your learnings at Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, the really big giants out there, if there's just one takeaway or one thing you could share that you learned from working with those bigger corporations, to the indie brands, the younger guys, what would be like the most important advice you could express to them?
Well, obviously, I learned a lot of these companies, right? I mean, it's been the foundation for my today in startup world and for my future. Obviously, I'm extremely grateful to both of those amazing companies. I think there's three things that I always go back to when it comes down to learnings that I apply every day of my life in whatever company I am with, even in startup world. One of them is financial discipline. Um, you know, Obviously, when you're coming from publicly traded companies and you have to deliver not just sales but gross margin and NOP and profitability, you have to look at your numbers and your P&L on a daily basis, right? And that is basically a habit that I think I've stayed with. I do like numbers, I have to say, and pretty good at them. So, but having that financial discipline, you really to just decide this is your budget, this is your goal. If it's a revenue, try to get as much as. But if you don't, really pay close attention to your costs. And like I said earlier, especially when the pandemic hit, it proved really valuable to us to make sure that we had that mentality. The second thing that is clearly applicable in all moments of when you're working is having that strategic thinking and learning how to put together and deliver a strategy. In companies like Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, as you can imagine, these are very complex strategy processes, which, by the way, I enjoy them a lot and a lot of fun. But thinking strategically, no matter where you are, in a big or a small company, is also super important. Decide, what are your dreams and your goals? Where do you want to play? These are the big learnings from Estee Lauder: where to play, how to win, and where are you going to allocate those resources. No matter how big or small your company is, you have to think that way, and that has really helped me a lot in all aspects of my development and my business. And the third one is really the ability to manage people. Really, I have worked in very small teams, as I do now, and then I've managed 120 people all over the world. So obviously the context is much more different, and you have to apply your leadership skills in different ways. But at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. It's all about building that trust, no matter where you are, in what's big, small, or small company, and making sure that you work well with and through others, right? Especially in a leadership role, in a more senior level position, and you have to inspire people and lead them. And I do that today at Kayo as well. Even though our organization is super small, I still have to do the same and lead my teams, lead my founders even sometimes, and being a support system for them and to whoever teams I'm working with. So that management of people has been such an amazing learning experience for me.
That's amazing. Wow, that was all really great info. I'm sure our audience will really appreciate it. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Richard, thank you so much for being with us. I know that the smaller brands out there will really appreciate the insights that you shared, and maybe some of the larger ones too. Like to know what's going on with some of the indie brands as well. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next time with another awesome guest for our Fireside chat from Peekage, a digital sampling platform. Thank you.